Welcome to the Parenting Lab podcast. I'm your parent coach, Brittany, and I am here to guide you into the calm, clarity, and connection you're looking for as you transform your parenting from the inside out. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Parenting Lab. I'm always so grateful that you're taking the time to listen in and spend a few minutes of your week with me. Today we are going to dig into a word that carries a lot of weight: surrender. When you hear that word, I'll bet a few images pop up in your mind of giving up, of waving a white flag, maybe of defeat. But in the context of healing and parenting, surrender is something very different, and it's really powerful. It is not collapse. It is not passivity. It's a deliberate and courageous choice to stop fighting certain things, especially our need to control, so we can protect the relationships we love and model a different way of being for our children. So in this episode, I want to do a few specific things. I want to define surrender clearly. I really want to pull back the curtain on what's happening in our bodies and our brains when we're trying to control versus when we're letting go. And I want to share some practical tools that you can actually use in the middle of a meltdown or even in a marriage argument that will help you hold firm boundaries without losing yourself. Okay? So if you've ever felt exhausted from trying to manage every outcome, or you get caught between staying in control and feeling resentful, then this episode is going to be really helpful for you, okay? What does surrender really mean? Let's start with the language because, like I always say, the words we're using really matter, right? So surrender is often misused or kind of used in a different context. So here's what surrender isn't. It is not giving up on someone you love. It's not resigning to harm or tolerating abuse, and it's not dismissing or letting go of values or safety. It is also not giving in to every demand or tantrum because it's easier in the moment. Okay, so what is it? Here's how I like to think of surrender in the context of healing in relationships. Surrender is the intentional acceptance of what we cannot control, combined with the disciplined choice of what we will still care for and protect. Okay, so that sentence has two parts for a reason, so I want to dig into that just a little bit deeper for you. The first part is acceptance of what we can't control. We cannot control another person's feelings or behavior, their pace of growth, the weather, the ups and downs of development. When we try, we expend a lot of energy on a losing game. And we model a kind of emotional violence to the people that we love because we're teaching them to depend on us to manage their internal world. And that's a huge responsibility to bear. Now, the second part is disciplined choice about what we will protect. Surrender doesn't mean leaving the kids to fend for themselves or removing consequences. It means choosing where to put your energy, protecting safety, modeling regulation, maintaining connection. So it's surrender plus responsibility, right? So here it is in a more practical frame. Surrender is the opposite of reactive control. It's rooted in curiosity and boundaries and care, not in fear or avoidance. So here's what I think one of the biggest barriers is to surrendering in parenting. And it's not actually our kids. It's these quiet little scripts or stories that we have been carrying around for years, often since our own childhoods. These are the unspoken rules that we live by, often without even realizing it, that make surrender feel not just hard, but impossible sometimes. These stories or the beliefs that we're holding about ourselves are often rooted in one of three things: fear, pride, and shame. So I want to go through what each of these looks like in case one of them feels true to you, maybe more than one. So maybe your inner voice sounds like this: if I don't control this, something terrible is going to happen. That is the safety fear. All right. It's the part of us that learned somewhere along the way that the only way to stay safe was to control and manage everything, every outcome, every possibility, right? These are the clients that I call the managers. Or maybe it sounds more like this. If I let go, I will lose respect. That is the pride and control mindset. This belief that if we're not the ones steering the ship at all times, people like our kids or our partner, or even outside people, are going to think less of us, or they won't treat us in the way that we feel that we deserve to be treated. Okay, these are the clients that I call the generals. And then there's another one that kind of cuts the deepest. And this is the one that sounds a little bit like, if I surrender, then I'm a bad parent. And that is the shame-based identity. Okay, that's the painful story that if we're not holding on tightly, we're failing. And those are the martyrs. These scripts are heavy. And here's the thing. Most of the time, they're not even true. They're old survival rules that we picked up in a different season of life. Maybe at one point they were protective, but they don't necessarily belong in the relationship that we're in right now. So naming these stories is the first step. Saying them out loud, maybe even writing them down, can take away some of their power. And the second step then is asking yourself, is this story actually true? And when the answer is no, and little hint, it probably is, you get to start rewriting that script. And that is where the healing begins. So now let's get practical about our bodies and our brains for just a minute, because the most useful parenting tools are always the ones that honor our physiology, okay? So when we try to control and micromanage emotions, our sympathetic nervous system often engages, which is our fight or flight reflex. Our heart rate rises, adrenaline courses through our bodies, and the prefrontal cortex, this part of our brain that reasons and empathizes and makes wise, informed choices, actually becomes less available. It goes offline. So basically, the harder we fight to control a situation while we're triggered, the worse decisions that we make. Okay, so surrendering in the sense of accepting and stepping out of the urgent fight allows our parasympathetic nervous system to come online, all right? And that is what invites social engagement and listening and compassion. So when we're in that state, this parasympathetic state, we can tolerate discomfort in ourselves and others, and we can respond from choice and not instinct, all right? So attachment science also connects here, because children who experience caregivers who are able to regulate and model repair develop that secure base that they can expand out from. And that's where they learn that discomfort can be tolerated and repaired. The flip side of that is that parents who are hyper-controlling or punitive in their punishments and discipline often shape anxious or avoidant attachment patterns in their kids. So surrender is not just a spiritual platitude, okay? It's not just I'm going to go to my Zen place and surrender to the universe. It's a physiological and psychological strategy, okay? Accept what you can't control, shift your physiology, and then act from a regulated nervous system. So labs 4 and 5 of the Parenting Lab series go really deep into attachment in the nervous system. So I'm going to link those in the show notes if you're curious about the science behind this. We dig deep in those, okay? So if you're curious, I'll attach those down below. But now let's get super practical. Let's run through some common parenting moments where the impulse to control might come out and be strong. And then we're going to talk about how to lean into surrender without abandoning our boundaries. So I'm going to point out 3 things in each of these scenarios. First, the feelings, how you might be feeling in that moment. All right. Second, I'm going to point out your reactive control move. So this might be your natural instinct or the behavior that is triggered in the situation, right? And then third, I'm going to give you a surrender-informed move, and this is the reframe. This is what could happen if you choose to respond intentionally instead of reacting instinctively. So let's start with scenario 1, the grocery store meltdown. I'm going to let you imagine what that might look for you because we've all been there, right? But here's what you might be feeling. Embarrassment, the urge to bribe or threaten, maybe the urge to make them stop right now. Now, your reactive control move might be to yell or to bribe or to drag them out or to punish them immediately. Now, a surrender-informed move, so again, this is the reframe, would be to accept that the meltdown is happening. All right? Radical acceptance. Keeping safety as the priority, naming what you see, and then setting a small boundary. So this might sound like, hey, buddy, I can see that you're really upset, but I am not going to let you hurt people or break things. That is not safe. We can sit here together till you're ready to get back up, and when you're ready, we're going to walk out. But if you scream or kick, I'm going to help you calm down, and then we're leaving. Okay? So notice that this keeps the boundary. We're going to leave when it's safe, but it also removes the frantic need to control the child's internal state. All right, scenario 2. Your teenager is refusing to do their homework. This is the ultimate power struggle, right? You might be feeling frustration, anxiety, or fear that they might fail. You might feel impatience or maybe a need to intervene so that they don't suffer consequences. Maybe you even feel like you need to make them suffer some consequences. So the reactive control move would be to threaten punishment, micromanage every step of the homework assignment, maybe even sit there and force them through it. Now, the surrender-informed move is to hold a boundary about your expectations while also stepping away from the emotional escalation. So in this situation, it would sound something like, look, homework is your responsibility. I am happy to help you strategize, but I'm going to check back in at 7 o'clock. If it's not done, you're turning in your phone for the night. I am willing to sit with you while you start, but I'm not going to do it for you. This is on you. All right, so this is surrender because you're not trying to force motivation. You're giving autonomy while also keeping a clear consequence. So now let's move to scenario 3. You're in an argument with your partner. You might be feeling defensiveness, resentment, maybe disconnection or exhaustion from carrying the mental load. The reactive control move might be to insist that you're right or to escalate the argument to protect your pride. But the surrender-informed move would be to let go of this need to be right in service of curiosity and repair. So in the moment, this might sound something like, you know what? I'm getting heated and I want us to talk about this, but I don't want to say things I'm going to regret. So let's take a beat. Let's pause for 20 minutes and come back. Or you might say something like, I see your point. I'm struggling with my part of this. I need you to help me understand what you're worried about. Okay. So these types of conflicts make it easy to confuse surrender with losing yourself. All right. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in just a minute. But in truth, the healthy surrender here isn't about abandoning your values or letting yourself get taken advantage of or overlooked or, like walked all over. It's about laying down the battle for control so that you can protect the connection, the relationship, while you still hold boundaries about what matters to you the most. Okay. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what the art of surrender really looks like. So to review what we've talked about so far, here are some ways to kind of build your surrender muscles. All right. So number 1, name the control story. When you feel triggered, silently name to yourself the story behind your impulse. What are you telling yourself is true? Or what are you believing about yourself or about this situation? If I don't fix this, we'll all fail. If I don't make them behave, people will think I'm a bad parent. Okay, whatever it is, naming the belief reduces that story's power. It pulls something unconscious into your awareness so that you can choose a different response. Second, take a break for a short physiological reset. Center yourself. When they're in the thick of it, you don't need a huge intervention. You just need a little nervous system tweak. It could be 3 deep breaths. It could be a glass of ice water, a breath of fresh air. Even 30 seconds will shift your window of tolerance and increase your capacity to move through that discomfort. Number 3, the surrender and boundary script. We kind of went over a few of these in those scenarios, but this is a 2-sentence pattern that you can remember. First, you're going to say the surrender statement. I'm letting go of the need to control how I feel right now. And then you're going to say the boundary statement. I'm not going to allow this. If it continues, I'm going to this. All right. So an example of that would be, I can't make you calm down, but I won't tolerate hitting. So if the hitting continues, we're going to leave the room until you can feel safe. Okay. Number 4, and this is one of my favorites. It's the RAIN acronym. RAIN stands for recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. It's a mindfulness tool that you can use in the moment or even after a blow up happens or any kind of disconnect. And so here's what those letters stand for. Recognize. Notice your reaction, your feelings, and your stories. Okay, easy. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling ashamed. I'm feeling, whatever. The A is for allow. Just let that feeling exist without trying to erase it. Be aware of your body and your sensations and what access you have to calm. The I is for investigate. Ask yourself gentle questions. What is the need here? What's being unmet? What am I afraid is going to happen? All right, so just explore what's going on. And the N is for nurture. Bring that compassion. Oh, this is hard, but I'm here and I'm going to figure it out. I'm capable of doing this. I have all the tools I need. So recognize, allow, investigate, nurture. This is a game changer when it comes to moving from action that serves fear and into action that serves connection. And the 5th one, practice repair language. Repair is the social currency of attachment. When you lose connection because you tried to control or reacted from shame, repair quickly. If you need help on how to do that, go back and listen to episode 20 and you can learn all about the process of repair and how to do that well. Okay, because repair is both surrender, which is admitting you're not perfect, and responsibility, which is holding that consequence. All right, so those are my 5 tips for getting really, really good at surrendering. Have I converted you yet? If not, that's okay. You might still have some fears, stories that are holding you back, and that is fine. One of the fears that I hear often with my clients is, if I surrender, will I lose myself? All right, so we're coming back to this concept of, will my child or partner walk all over me, right? And the short answer is no. Not if you pair surrender with clear boundaries and values. When you choose to yield on something, do it because it aligns with your values, not because you're trying to avoid discomfort. And hold on to those clear boundaries, define your non-negotiables, and be consistent. Okay, so this is the key. Surrender without boundaries is passive submission. Boundaries without surrender is rigid control. I'm going to say that one more time because this is huge. Surrender without boundaries is passive submission. Boundaries without surrender is rigid control. We're looking for the balance between those two, right? So I want you to ask yourself, am I surrendering out of compassion or am I surrendering out of fear? And if it's fear, pause and go through those 5 steps. And if it's compassion, move forward with confidence. So I want to touch for just a second on how surrender shows up in our marriages and partnerships, because this doesn't just affect our parenting. In fact, I feel like we need to really learn how to make space for this in our relationships if we really want to nurture deep connection and healthy communication with our partner. Surrender in partnership isn't about losing influence. It's about giving up the small battles so that you can win the big ones, like mutual trust and safety and intimacy. So when partners practice surrender, arguments de-escalate faster. Repair becomes possible and normalized, and partners feel safer taking emotional risks. On the flip side, if surrender gets you punished or ignored repeatedly, then seek help or advocacy or professional support. All right. Surrender is not for abusive or unsafe situations. Surrender does not mean tolerating harm. And if you feel resentful after surrendering, check the boundary. Did you sacrifice a value for avoidance? Repair by naming it, setting a consequence, and then practice it again. All right. Surrender done well with a partner is radical humility. It says our relationship matters more than being acknowledged as right in the moment. Okay, so before we close, I have a small experiment for you. I want you to pick one situation this week where you usually try to control the outcome. I want you to acknowledge that control story that you tell yourself. Then I want you to use the surrender and boundary script at least one time. Then I want you to either journal or just hold space for how you feel about that process. All right. If you accept this challenge, I promise that it will reveal more than you expect about where your control is protective, where it's performative, and where surrender might open up more connection. All right. So, as a final thought, I just want you to remember that surrender is paradoxical. It asks us to be brave enough to let go of what we can't control, while also being disciplined enough to protect what we can control. All right. So this is big. Listen to this episode again if you need to review these concepts. This is a big reframe like we usually do, right? We're right in the thick of it. Thank you so much for being here and for being the kind of person who's really willing to do this inner work. I know that it's messy, but it's also brave and it changes generations. If you want a printable checklist of the tools that we've talked about today, that surrender and boundary script, the RAIN model, or I have a quick guided exercise on surrender, I will link to that in the show notes. You can also download that from my website, theparentinglab.org, under free resources. As always, I hope you'll join me next week, where we will continue to explore the art and science of parenting and put your parenting to the test. Take care, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Parenting Lab podcast. For our complete catalog of online courses, free resources, or to join our mailing list, please visit theparentinglab.org. See you next time.